So all morning we've been entertained by Cheesecake Factory, Wild Fork, Dig. We just heard from Peroni. You're probably hungry and thirsty by now, but we're going to do one more session, power through to lunch. My name's Leela Srinivasan. I am the CEO of a company called Parity. Those of you who were here yesterday maybe heard a little bit about Parity, but we are a sports marketing and sponsorship platform that focuses specifically on professional women athletes, and we help brands create amazing partnerships with them for content creation, for brand storytelling, for in-person activations, all the good stuff, with athletes across 80 different sports, including motorsports. So very excited to be here today with Divya Goel, who is the VP of Fan Engagement for both FanCapital and Williams Racing. So a lot on her plate. We're going to get into that a little bit. So Divya, I don't want to read through your LinkedIn profile. That would take a while apart from anything else, because you've done a lot of really interesting things. You've had an incredible career across multiple sports, NFL, NBA, but also surfing, lacrosse, and now motorsports. So I guess to kick us off, what fueled this career path? Did you play a lot of sports growing up?
Yeah, so I played a lot of sports while I was growing up. My dad has always really been big into sports as well. I grew up in LA, so I don't think there's a lack of sports teams in that city. So definitely grew up at a very young age, going to sports games, played sports, was always active and outside. So it just seemed like a natural fit for me to go into sports when I wanted to in my career path. Every kind of company that I've been at, I've tried to add one skill set to my arsenal, essentially. So I really got my start in analytics and paid media, and then have built on other parts of the marketing set on top of that to understand not only who the fan is, why the fan does what they do, but then also build experiences and engagement tools to top off that data and research that I've been so keen on kind of understanding and living.
Fantastic. And then I have to ask, given the range of sports you've worked for, tell us a war story about an athlete. What's your favorite run-in?
So it's not necessarily a war story, but if anyone is a New York Giants fan, they had a running back a while ago named Rashad Jennings. And I was very young at this point. I think it was my second Super Bowl. We were down in Houston. And at that point, the NFL social plan was still pretty much burgeoning. Like, they were trying to figure out what was going to resonate, what platforms they wanted to lean heavy into. I think at that point, the NFL YouTube deal hadn't even been signed. It was very early on in those days. So while I was doing pricing and fan engagement on the floor of NFL Experience, I also, within my breaks, was running around with the NFL Snapchat account, taking snaps and putting them on Snapchat or Snap now, of all the players that were at the different activations to promote NFL Experience as a whole. What I did not realize when I handed Rashad my phone though, is that he was Snapchatting to all of my friends in my story and had not switched over to the NFL account.
No.
So my friends for a full 24 hours just got Shad vibes for a decent amount of time. He did a full proposal on there. Luckily I was able to save all of the content as it was still live and push it over to the NFL feed, but probably hands down one of my most interesting moments. And then later that night proceeded to see him at a Bud Light party in jorts and a cowboy hat. So really rounded out my day.
Wow.
But just to show how far we've come, and now that they have a full social strategy, content strategy, multiple cameras, multiple angles at all events. 8-9 years ago, that was me running around with my personal phone.
Well, that's when you do some of your best learning, right?
Exactly.
For sure. So now you find yourself at FanCapital. You're deep in motorsports and with Williams Racing. So, over the last day or two, we've been hearing, the question around metrics gets asked, and some people address it head on. Some people say it doesn't matter. But, I think when brands think about the potential of F1, the first thought is, oh, Jesus, that's a lot of money, right? So what are the pros and cons that you see with the way that spending has typically happened in F1?
Yep. So historically, I think what we've been at, and I've noticed this over time, is that the car provides a lot of added value, right? And I think I don't think you can argue with that comment, especially if you're somebody like Red Bull or Ferrari, where your car is being shown on broadcast far more than somebody like a Williams. So that's a challenge at Williams that we have to contend with every time. And so for us, what we've tried to do in the traditional sponsor space is provide added value that's not necessarily on car. Sure, there's a car attribution component to it, but what can we build and integrate with on our digital and for our fans at a consistent basis to bring them back to our properties in a very sticky fashion. So we have a lot of gamification elements. We have a lot of partner digital elements as well that in a sense, additionally supplements the value of like what a 2x2 might cost on our car, right? And historically, that's what it's been. It's been the 2x2 logo on a car, but now what we're seeing is a lot of brands are interested in how do we cross-pollinate our customers or fans and consumers? And what we're really doing right now on the Williams side, which is a very lucrative partnership for us, is Kraken. And we've identified and gotten into the kind of crypto NFT space here. And it's one of our most successful partnerships because the customer and the goal that we're going after heavily aligns between both brands.
Got it. That's great. When we think about fan engagement, I think for consumer brands, in particular, and then sports teams as well, it can be quite challenging to build those relationships. Tell us more about what's behind those challenges. Why has it been different in the past? And then we'll talk about what you're doing through your FanCapital work.
Yeah. So when it's been historically fan engagement in the past, well, some of the challenges that we try and overcome is, I think, and someone may have spoken to it yesterday, but all the data is in a different place, right? So sometimes there's not a unified version of the data. Sometimes people have been doing fan engagement across 3-4 different departments, but not realizing that there's opportunity to hone and bring the entire program together into one set. There's also been a lot of challenges when it comes to measurement, again, where now, especially with like Apple and cookies being essentially removed from the environment as we're going towards that trend, how are you truly identifying that it's Leela coming back to our site every single day, or Leela's gone out and made a purchase on our e-commerce store and now we can stitch that back to our site? So there's a lot of programs that we put into place and a lot of data stitching that happens. I'm not the brainchild of that, but my counterpart is. He runs all of analytics. So he's the brainchild and he's been very integral in stitching all of that together in the background and really understanding that Leela comes from a certain background in a certain area, and then the next message that we want to serve her is going to be commerce. Or she is just registered. Maybe we don't want to hit her on the head with a monetary value proposition. We want to serve her our Michelob Ultra Lap of Legends content to get her more involved in the AI because we know that she's a fan of technology.
Yeah, it's that bringing it all together is, I think, the tricky part. So it sounds like FanCapital is doing that. I'd love to, I think we've got a little video here to just take a look at some of the work that you're doing to tee up that conversation. So we can play that.
It's amazing to see you guys out in force. Bring this heat, bring this energy, America.
Williams Racing Formula One driver Logan Sargent!
I feel like one of the nicest things, and the opportunity to engage with fans, put smiles on faces.
No other team that I've seen on the grid has done anything remotely like this. It's just been awesome.
You won't see any other teams doing this level of interaction.
Wow, amazing. So many fans of the sport here.
You and a guest are going to the Las Vegas Grand Prix.
We're so thankful. Go Williams!
Thank you very much, Russell Parker. What a cool name.
Chaz, I've got you on the helmet this week. Thank you for all the support.
Let's go through your questions in the latest episode of Val's Verdict, as presented by Kraken. Thank you to all of our fans, to all of our supporters, to those that have followed our journey.
So nice to see the growing number of Williams fans. All your support has not been unnoticed. We feel it at every single race weekend, so thank you very much.
Amazing. I mean, you can sort of feel the excitement from here. I should have said I'm a 3-time CMO before I came a CEO, and I'm just thrilled that the experience economy has really shown up in full force post-COVID because people love to go out and experience things. So clearly you're creating incredible experiences, but tell us a bit more about FanCapital. Like, how does data help you accomplish that and just create these incredible experiences?
Yeah, so I think what we've done at FanCapital is twofold. One is taking all the fan engagement that you see and you harness there, and that video covers on about 8 to 10 either experiential, digital, in-person, the whole gamut of what we would like to do and what we put the fan as the center of everything. What we do on the FanCapital side is we really want to take that fan identity and that fan platform and turn it into something that is monetizable. And so for us, it's how do we take that fan identity, bring them into the system, make and create that sticky engagement off of them, and then go to a partner and say, such as Kraken, and say, hey, we have all of these fans that are coming in, you have all these fans that are coming in, how do we find that middle ground in the Venn diagram that then we can also grow that piece of the pie, where more Williams fans are coming in and they're exploring digital collectibles, and we strategically phrase it as a collectible, not an NFT, knowing that there has been some sentiment in the world that people are kind of veering away from that NFT space. And then again, how does Kraken come in and get more motorsports fans involved in that space as well? So that's one that we really highlight. Another one that we really like to highlight and keep kind of moving forward is golf as well. So we do a lot with golf, and golf traditionally has just been an oil brand. And it's golf rest of world, I would like to specify that. But at the same time with golf, we built a full digital component livery program that then we went and sold golf. So now golf has the data, they have the eyeballs, they have the awareness, we have the impression count on that as well, that then we can go to golf and say, these are the exact metrics that we hit for you during our partnership, and here are all of the other ad values that we can support and provide for you. And then we can try and either upsell, keep them at the same price, whatever our commercial team wants to do. They are now armed with that data. And not only are they armed with that data, they are armed with the demographics behind that data, which is a really big piece for all of our partners, is understanding who the fan is. And that's a lot of the times what Williams and Alex and Logan as FanCapital clients all will bring to the table as key differentiators, is having the demographic and putting the money into actual metrics.
Okay, I've got a couple of questions coming out of that. So first off, the NFT conversation. So at Parity, we launched an NFT platform maybe a couple of years ago. And what we found was that, well, people didn't actually really want NFTs. What they wanted was the physical goods. And so we still have an NFT platform in the background, but we also then launched something called Parity Locker, which lets consumers basically buy game-worn gear and memorabilia directly from women athletes, signed, personalized, all that. And that's going really well. Tell us more about the behavior that you're seeing, even if we don't call them NFTs, but digital collectibles. Is that really something that consumers are leaning into? And maybe give us a couple of examples of how those are working well at Williams and for your business.
Yeah, so there was some research done. So we strictly called them digital collectibles. If you look at any of our platforms, it's a digital collectible. But what we found is that people are into that collection space. And I think we had already primed them for that. We have on Williams Racing side, if you sign up on the app, you have your driver card, which you can customize with backgrounds, different helmets, basically create your own fan identity. And then from there, that unlocks a set of badges and collectibles that you can go after. So we essentially already had it on the Williams platform, but we wanted to bring another brand in to be able to really energize and supercharge that. So what we did, and we've noticed actually, is then adding that brand and doing a collaboration with another brand. So for example, last year, towards the end of the year, we ran a fan appreciation program. As part of that fan appreciation program, Kraken had a golf livery NFT. And for those of you who are aware of golf's history in this space, they have been in motorsports since pretty much day one. It's a very lucrative partnership, and they always are looking to expand and evolve in motorsports. But what this really gave golf was another opportunity to reach a younger set of fans with the collectible space, and so they loved it. And we released, I believe, 7 different versions and angles of the golf livery that Williams Racing ran last year that did very, very well. And then we paired those with different rarity levels. And you can see that people signed up for Grid Pass, which is our digital collectible kind of rewards program with Kraken. And you can see as soon as we released the golf one, it went like this, and then it tapered back down a bit, and then we went back to status quo. But I think within that week, we got roughly 10 to 15,000 new within a week, which for us having launched that program 4 weeks prior, 6 weeks prior, was a really big bump for us. So as we can integrate these partners together, and then people want special things. So we had we had the different rarities, we had the different colors, we had the different backgrounds. And then also, if you do sign up for Grid Pass, we have a really cool history in the making series launching next week that'll run for 5 or 6 weeks, in which we're also revealing imagery and artwork that hasn't been seen before. So it's how do we give somebody something special, but then what we've done is tie in also in-person rewards on the back of that. So if you have Grid Pass, you get 15% off any Williams merch at any point in time during the year. If you have Grid Pass, you get special perks at our fan zones, which those heavily highlight as well. If you have Grid Pass, you get pre-sale access. They're up for a certain level of pricing, things like that we're creating a full experience around it so that collectible means something to the fan when they get it.
Super cool. So a lot of that sounds like the sort of the freebies that a fan can get by leaning into the community, which is a great way to entice them there. How do you then work with a Kraken, say, to make sure that actually flows through to monetization? What are the steps after that?
Yep. So I mean, I think everyone pretty much has nailed it on the head where you get to a weekly call, right, where you're rattling off metrics. But for us, we do have a consistent forecast of individuals that are going to come in. And what we also realize that if somebody has Grid Pass, we've done the research to look and say they're going to come back 20 to 25 times more than the average user that does not. And they're not only coming back to us 20 to 25 times more, but they're checking their wallet on Kraken more often to see what other collectibles are in the space or what they can trade for as value. And mind you, we're giving these collectibles away for free. They're not monetary. We were very much passionate about a free to play area, but then people actually are going off and buying these collectibles, and after Gulf launched, some of the highest rarities were going for $100, $120 on the trading platform for Kraken. So for us, that's part of the metric that we also take into account, and then as well as how do we see the growth, and then by getting more stickiness, then actually we on the Williams side are able to go out to other partners and sell on that same stickiness, and then kind of exponentially monetize that value.
Got it. Have you been able to push to the lifetime value of a fan yet, based on this?
We have, actually. So
what can you share?
We're looking at roughly, I would say probably 20 right now for just the normal fan, right? But the idea is that we don't want many normal fans in our ecosystem. So that's about as much as I'm allowed to share. But the rest of that is, we have a higher value if someone's a Grid Pass user. We have a higher value if someone has collected all their badges throughout the year. We have a higher value if someone is a Williams fan and an Alex fan as well, because there's a bit of a Venn diagram in the middle. You'd be surprised at how little that window is, though. So by FanCapital also taking on the Alex platform, we're able to stitch that data in on the back end and actually extract a larger lifetime value for these fans across all FanCapital platforms.
Yeah, it feels like that's the holy grail sometimes, is like pushing to that lifetime value. Many careers ago, I worked at OpenTable, ran restaurant marketing there, and we were able to figure out what the lifetime value of a diner who downloaded our app was, because we monetized when they made a restaurant booking. And so that we were then able to back into, well, how much can we actually spend to acquire those fans? So it's, if you can get to that LTV, then it really makes a difference. I guess the other question from your original comment was just around demographics. So tell us more about what you see in the demographics around Williams and how that's evolving. I think you shared a little bit about this geographically when you spoke yesterday.
Yep. So for us, geographically, it's big for us to focus on 4 key markets, which are going to be US, UK, Australia, and Canada. That just happens to be where a decent amount of our fans are. We know they have a higher lifetime value than that base as well. For us, the UK fan tends to be older. We have a storied history. So for those of you who may not know about Williams, Williams has, I think now, unfortunately, just the second most podiums. Second or third most national titles, or global titles, excuse me. But on that front, 10, 20 years ago, when with Sir Frank Williams was unstoppable. They were on the forefront of innovation. They were winning races. Now, coming to a bit of the back of the grid, we've noticed that those 60-plus-year-old fans are still around, though. They want to be Williams fans, but they are a very different demographic. You talk to them about the 5 tires, and they're going to look at me with a third eye and go, I know this. I've known this since I could walk, versus somebody in the U.S. who is really excited to go meet Logan or say hi to Logan, but doesn't really have a concept of what tires they should be running, how the front wing is changed. They're more interested in it from a culturally relevant standpoint than anything else. So how do we split those audiences, and how do we figure out what messaging resonates, and how do we serve those messages dynamically to those audiences with I would say a decently small team at this point. We're about 15 in New York, but 30, 35 globally. So we have, a lot of legwork we're using and leveraging AI for certain things. We're using and leveraging automation for certain things as well, so that we can scale up our communications by still keeping it like a one-to-one communication, or feel like a one-to-few communication with as many fans as possible.
Excellent. I've got 2 more questions, and then we'll go to the audience for 1 or 2 incredibly incisive questions. So start prepping those if you can. My 2 questions. So first off, I think we saw a little bit of it in that video, just the impact that bringing athletes into into contact with the fans can really have. And we see this at Parity as well. One of the things that we love to do with our partners is bring athletes into activations they're already doing, and whether it's an Olympic medalist that they can pose with and get autographs with and actually wear the medal with, or a really, really tall WNBA player. I mean, it changes the energy in the room. So maybe if you could share a little bit about how you're allowed to, what are you allowed to do with your athletes? How much of your time are you able to get, and how do you use that?
It's a very complicated question. I go by what communications tells me is okay. I ask for the world, and then normally I am cut down by about 90%, and we end up with 10. So that's essentially what I do. I do think that on the Williams side, though, we've been very good at communicating with both Alex Logan and actually JV, our team principal, Jensen Button, who's one of our one of our former drivers as well, but still is on as brand ambassador, Jamie and Leah. The importance of events like these. Not only for Williams, but then on the FanCapital side, thinking with my other hat, how important it is for them to build their own brand on their own terms, because you don't know what's going to happen in this market. Drivers change teams let go of drivers. You just have no idea. And so how do we explain it to them in a fashion where they want to show up for these, they want to go do a Q&A, they want to meet the fans, they enjoy the support, and it's really us phrasing it in a way to them where Alex shows up and is happy to be there, instead of Alex showing up and being like, this is an obligation and I don't want to do this anymore. So for us, it's how do we put together and structure those comms, and I will say that our comms team has been very good in helping us with that and understanding the importance of the physical touch point. We also know that people who show up at fan zones are more likely to come back and engage with us probably by 50 or 60% than the normal fan. So that is another data point that actually we use and communicate to Logan and Alex's teams to make them understand that we're building a fan for life with just a 5-second touch point with you.
Yeah, that's huge. And then my last question, we have an audience that includes some that are very close to F1 and motorsport, some who are brands that are, here to kind of learn more about the space. So what lessons do you think brands from outside of motorsports and sports can take away from what you've been learning about fan engagement and how to monetize?
Yeah, I think the global nature of it is really unique in F1. Like, coming from an NBA and NFL background too, I know we all tout that we're global at some point, but F1 obviously doesn't have a home race at all. Oh, like, you have your home race, but there's no home stadium, right? There's not something you're trying to sell out for 180 games a season or 90 at that point. But when you're looking at those numbers in those areas and it truly being global, there's a lot of nuances that come with every market, and there's a lot of wanting to, as I see it, boil the ocean. And we've had to come back and say, you can't boil the ocean. You cannot go after every single country in the market. Let's delve into tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, and then see where the media goes from there and see where the fans are really diving in. And I think that globally is a really big thing for me, because at the NBA they do it, I would argue. I think at the NFL there's still probably some runway there for them. But really localizing that experience in market, if you're truly looking to build that fan, is something that I've learned and I think is irreplaceable knowledge at this point for a career that I would like to do globally for a very long time.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Divya, questions? Right here.
Kind of comment question mixed in. So we all know that when Bernie was running F1, it was much more of a license, like you pay, you get F1 races to come to your city. How have you seen, since Liberty took over, their support for and commitment to growing the sport and the audiences, especially for teams that are off the podium?
Safe space. I think that there is some way to go in having Liberty Media or having any rights holders understand that it's an all boats rise mentality. And I think we're getting there, right? What used to happen 3-4 years ago with restrictiveness of even using F1 and either influencer handles or teams being hesitant to work in that capacity has vastly changed, right? Some people thought last year, I had a conversation with our head of marketing last year, and he was very against it. He comes from traditional F1. He's been in the space for 40 years now, and I kind of went to him and I said, I think this is a new era. Can we ask F1 if this is okay now for these rights, and ask Liberty Media if this is okay if we use these monikers? And if sure enough, they all went, yeah, that's fine. But that rule changed and no one really was aware of it. And so I think us pushing that envelope and continuing to ask, fine, I'll get shut down 9 times out of 10. But that one time I don't, I will monetize the crap out of it. But I think for us, especially with arguably Verstappen being 20 seconds ahead of the grid almost every single time, for Williams, it's really important to use those little pieces that we can get and really push the envelope and show other teams that we can be innovative and we can ask for those rights and we can prove out an all boats rise type of model with a little bit of less restriction amongst teams. I actually arguably think the NBA does that very well, where they're such a globally highlighted sport because the restrictions, they are there, the rights are there, but they don't really enforce them as much as you would think.
Peter?
Thanks. So much of the value to Formula One teams is in winning and scoring points. And in terms of brand exposure, as we heard from Peroni, that's one of the things they're hoping to see more of with Ferrari doing better. I'm curious, with Williams being where they are on the grid and where they finished in the last few seasons, what unique pressures or different kinds of pressures Williams faces that you and your team have to deal with that's different maybe than what someone like at Red Bull, your counterpart at Red Bull would face, and how have you used that to kind of either overcome or surpass, or do you have any like anecdotes of things that you're personally proud of that you've done?
Yeah, actually, one of the biggest things I think that we do here, and you hit the nail on the head, where it's just a lack of exposure sometimes. So there's a couple things we've done. One is we've really tried to highlight Alex and Logan's personalities. And I think that Alex's personality he's come out of his shell over the last year, and we're really trying to highlight his personality so that he does get a little more airtime, right? So that he is in the car and he's making those moves and he's stuck in those exciting battles, even though it may not be for the podium places at this point right now. The other thing that we've done to highlight a program from last year was our fan appreciation program. So we picked 50 fans, and because we have our data stitched together, we were able to pick the 50 fans that had essentially engaged the most with our digital properties, with our e-commerce, with our fan experiences, everything of that nature. We're active possibly on social as well. And what we did was we not only put them on the car, which has been done in the F1 space, but we wrote a story about every single one of them and why they're a Williams fan. And we really highlighted that fan. And then we also put their names on the pit crew helmets. So that weekend in Abu Dhabi, every pit crew member was representing a fan that we had picked out. And it's those types of things where then those helmets are a Gulf helmet. They're a Gulf branded helmet. So we're adding the brand exposure on the back end by using these other elements of brands that are partnering with us to highlight in a unique and individual way that may actually not be trackside dependent, may not be grid dependent. And so those and that added exposure, we're very good at putting together and packaging them into experiences and then controlling the output of those.
Love the creativity.